Hi, everybody. Welcome to Conversations with Calvin, We the Species. If I appear a little bit wired, I am wired because it's 6:30 at night and I've done five of these today. But I have a wardrobe, so I change each interview. I put on a different sweater. Same shirt, but who's going to know? This is a joyous, wonderful 2 weeks for me. I get a chance to interact with those who are screening at the Garden State Film Festival, one of my favorite undertakings. I've been involved with them and doing stuff with them, and it gives me an opportunity to meet people like Dedi Felman, a filmmaker, and actually, based on what I saw last night, Take Good Care, which I'm going to hold up if you can see it. An extraordinary filmmaker because I got a lot out of that, and we'll talk about that. I am a consummate film person. Films have changed my life from Casablanca onwards. So I'm thrilled to be here with you, Didi. And why don't we just do a quick uh, little background stuff, and then we're going to jump into Take Good Care. Take it away.
Okay, great. My name is Dedi Felman. I am a writer, director, and sometimes producer. And I grew up in the wilds of New Jersey, and I am really, really excited to be coming to Garden State Film Festival. It was actually like a number one choice for me to have my East Coast premiere in my home state. Yeah, the Springsteen connection for sure, but just also my cousin lives in Asbury Park and my aunt who
Aunt Esther.
what?
Aunt Esther.
Yeah, she was very uh integral and supportive of this project and had introduced me to people. And so I'm really excited to be coming back to New Jersey where she will be able to see it.
That's great. That's great. Are you wondering how I knew about Aunt Esther?
Yeah.
I'll tell you later.
Okay. Oh my gosh, there's going to be some random New Jersey connection.
All right, good. Now we got a background. So what's Take Good Care? I'm trying to hold this so it's in the light. Take Good Care. What is it about?
Okay, well, it's a very grounded sci-fi dramedy short, and it's set in the year of 2035 when, in order to conserve resources and shrink cost, the elderly who reach 65 years old are promptly sent off to depart, i.e., to die. Except for Sophie, our heroine, is a very stubborn biogerontologist. She's not going to give up that easily, and she's in pursuit of what she calls her healthier aging therapy. Others might call it immortality, but either way, her clock is ticking. She has to go before the council and get permission to continue on, and they tell her she needs a caretaker. The prime candidate for that caretaker is her already frustrated artist daughter, Ren, who has failed to launch and blames her work obsessed mother for all her failures in life. So then the question becomes, will Ren take care of her mother, but also will Sophie's obsessive work cost her her main reason for living, which is her daughter?
Heavy stuff. I mean, it's heavy, but then again, there's comedic, dramedy. That's why.
We hope so.
Yeah. From what and listen, I've watched the film last night, so I know what I'm talking about to an extent. And from what I read, is it Molly Hagan who played? Um,
Yeah, Molly Hagan plays Sophie.
yeah, and it was a great performance. Obviously, she's up for Best Actress, correct?
Yeah, she's up for Best Actress, which she totally deserved. It was a gift working with Molly. It really was. I told her, and I think I posted that, it was kind of a pinnacle
Mhm.
of my not so long filmmaking career, but still to be able to work with an actor of that
Yeah,
caliber and just, from the pre-production process on, where you're talking to the actors and discussing character with them, discussing lines, and just knowing that she just got it. She knew who that woman was.
yeah,
She knew all the little nuances that I hoped were in the writing, But you put a lot of things in the writing and that doesn't necessarily translate. But Molly not only translated them all, but sort of took it to the next level. So she's
Um,
a
how'd you come up with the idea for Take Good Care?
um
It's a wild idea, you know.
well, and and I think I was saying this to you, like it's interesting. It's sort of twofold. One of which was that I went up to San Francisco and I was working with a scientist there and sort of got a little bit familiar with Biotech Bay and all the advances that are now being made in science, in the field of gerontology or biological aging, and got really, really fascinated because the demographics are just shifting so incredibly fast. So, I had set this at 65. Nowadays, we would probably set it, I don't know, closer to 80. But these are people who are studying the possibility of us living to 120, 150. I'm like, our whole system does not quite comprehend that or wrap their minds around like the continuous activity that people such as yourselves are capable of, are continuing to exercise in the world. And then the second piece, inspiration, was that I had come out here very late as a career. I started very late. This is not my first career. And um started the a year or two after I started doing filmmaking, my mom got sick. So I went to her house in New Jersey and was helping to caretake for her, which was a really interesting experience because now I want to preface it by saying that my experience was totally unique. Everybody's experience is totally unique. And I was incredibly fortunate in the sense that we got a diagnosis. My mom stuck around for longer, thank gosh, but generally it was within the year. So my caretaking time was very limited. My next door neighbor took care of her mom for, I don't know, decades. And so I know how hard it can be. But my film actually came from a very different perspective because my mom was like you. My mom was so vibrant and active. We were doing book club up until the very last minute. And it just sort of, I wanted to make space for that kind of a character. We see so much of like this misery stuff where the person has lost their facilities. And like I said, I want to honor everybody's experience, but that was not my experience. My experience was, like I said, that you can continue to be vibrant and contributing, and our relationship could contribute to involve up to the point of a person's death. And, and that just seemed like such a, I don't know. I just hadn't seen anybody do that before.
Interesting, interesting. In making this, Take Good Care, some notable challenges you had. Um,
Uh, yeah, there are a lot.
there were a bunch.
There are a lot. As I'm sure you know from talking to other filmmakers, independent film is a beast of its own. And I mean, actually, film generally, you never feel like you have enough money. You never feel like you have enough time. You never feel like you have enough crew. And I think doing this kind of filmmaking, and I just also want to start this by saying, like, I had an amazing crew. I was working with amazing actors. Um, and yeah, like my DP, I don't want to list everybody because then I know I'll forget someone, but I had just had stellar people on the team. But even so, and especially doing something like genre film, you have to build a world. And that was really, really challenging. And what was so interesting about this was that I kept, and I think you mentioned like one of my early inspirations for, people whose life is getting cut off by the government was Logan's Run. But there was a little bit of like a wacky tone to this that was very Brazil like. Then there was kind of like the Nancy Myers older woman family drama. So there were a lot of different tones, there were a lot of different pieces, and I had to world build on a non existent budget. So it really just became a question of throwing out a bunch of challenges to a lot of different people, from the person who made the robots to, the people who made the sort of blue plastic sort of what do you call them, like dividers in the spa,
Hmm.
to a woman I talked to very, very early on. And this is like maybe a little bit of insight to how film works, but you usually on a big budget film you'll get a production designer, and one of the things that production designer is doing is they're bringing their own concept to your film. They're sort of saying like, I see it like this, and you as a director have a concept, and then you're trying to meet them in the middle. And my concepts were all very like, you know, like I said, expensive kind of sci-fi you would see on TV or in the movies. And she said to me, but Dee Dee, you've written it in there. What about just like it's a healthcare spa? And it was just so brilliant because it kind of turned my mind around to how we could do this more affordably. And even within one location, to be going from station to station to station, kind of like you do in the gym,
Hmm.
so that we could give it different looks and we could give it different movement and different angles depending on who these women who are essentially tied together. Like they can't move a lot. We couldn't do a lot of action. We had to do this with a very static composition, but we could move them around the room in ways, like I said, with this sort of healthcare gym concept where you go, from the ultraviolet rays to the freezing booth to, all the different things. So anyway, that was a real breakthrough for me and helped me, and the production designer who eventually worked on the film work within our budget to actually create something that we hope has some visual interest to it.
Do you have any fun memories in pre-production or you know, or even on a set? I always love to hear these. Did you have some fun stuff that going on?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it was just, I couldn't have asked for a better crew. I had an assistant director who really knew what she was doing and was going around. And so my cast would come up to me and say, "Oh, Dee Dee, I feel so taken care of," which is exactly what you want when you're like a director. You want everybody to feel good, even when like there's craziness going on around you. And I would say, I don't know if it was funny, but one of the one of the most amazing things that happened was that we had a power cut. And this is a location where we could only be there 10 hours max. And that's like including wrap in and wrap out.
Wow.
So, yeah, for some reason, the power went out. We had a power cut. And we were sitting there, and, the gaffer immediately went into action and adjusted the lights so that we could just use the colored lights. The actors, sort of like figured out how we're going to do all, with their angles. And then my DP he was so unflustered that even as me and the AD are kind of like trying to deal with, the location manager about like, what are we going to do about all this? He just, you know, got it set up. And it's one of my favorite shots in the whole film, which is like when they're sitting in the two chairs and you're at this low angle and we're doing that kind of slow push. And we got it with no lights and absolute chaos reigning around us.
Funny, funny stuff.
So, like it's just stuff like that where I guess for me, the reason I say it's fun is because collaborating with your team is just such a unique joy to filmmaking. I mean, I do a lot of writing. I sit in my room and I'm like stuck with myself and my dogs, but to me, like there's just so much joy when you're working with other people and they're all collaborating their ideas and something like that goes absolutely wrong, but everybody pitches in and comes together. It's like this weird kind of unique joy.
Esprit de corps. Yeah. Nice, 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 nice. I know about that, in sales, my little region and stuff, and it's a good feeling. I'd just like to go off topic with you for a second. As a journalist, I plagiarized one of my favorite journalists, and one of the questions she always used to ask. So I'm going to ask, and you don't have to answer it, but it's cute, it's fun. You give a couple answers, whatever. But here goes. Simple. Excluding family or friends, somebody living or dead you'd like to spend a day with.
Oh gosh. I feel like such a film nerd that the first thing that pops into my mind is one of my favorite filmmakers, which is Christopher Nolan. And we do have this tradition in film where we call it shadowing. So you go to somebody's set and you observe that director. And I would love to be a fly on the wall during a Christopher Nolan film. I'll just put it out in the universe. But yeah,
Okay.
that's probably not like the big philosophical or
Hey, no,
historical
no,
answer I'm supposed to give, but
that's perfect. That's perfect. Good answer. Hey, it's a good answer. Um,
and I genuinely am such a I mean, I know, everybody's got their own take, but I am a sci-fi, humanist person, and I loved Oppenheimer not just because it was set near where I grew up.
by the way, really set right by you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
the
you were
Institute
close
for
to
Advanced
Princeton.
Study played like a prominent role, and I think they were literally at the pond, and yeah.
Yeah, that's a
So, but
whole. That's a whole. Somebody should do more. Somebody should do a film, Didi, about that whole. Hey, it got started by Louis Bamberger, who was a retailer, one of the most innovative, most amazing retailers in American history, but very little is
Mhm.
known about him. I mean, he used to
Yeah.
send, we're talking about 1920s, he used to send letters and stuff out to people like Amazon does. Inviting them, how was your shopping experience? I mean, are you kidding me? In the 20s? So he made a lot of money, and him and his sister put together a lot of money. He was a single guy, never married. So him and his sister, and he had a lot of money to give away. So they set up the money that became the Institute for Advanced Study when the likes of
Wow. I'm not sure I actually realized that that was Bamberger's money. I
yeah,
mean,
nobody does. Nobody does. But it was
well,
Louis Bamberger who set that up.
you're right. We definitely got to do more investigation here. There might be a film.
Yeah, really. I mean, it's quite a thing. Of course, when Einstein gets there, that just puts the place on a map like unbelievably. So, and I worked in Princeton as a pharmacist, so it's a wonderful. In my opinion, there's no place on earth quite like Princeton. The air smells from old books.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
it's redolent with books and academia, and it was a few years after. It was years after I worked in Princeton that I found this. It's Einstein's eyes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he fascinates me, and then back some years ago when I was beginning my writing career, and I was not a writer, and I needed help, I did my spiritual incantations, and I channeled him. And a few weeks later, my writing just like took off. It was really, and listen, I have no business being a writer, even though I got a Kirkus star, which is the highest award you can get. I'm not a writer, but it came from Einstein and the Institute for Advanced Study and stuff, and it fascinates me. And listen, it should fascinate you. How, and I'm asking, we're off topic here, but how does anybody, how does anybody back in 1900 conceive of the universe and relativity
Yeah.
without Google?
But this is what I love about, and it's funny because I actually got asked this at a film festival where I should probably shouldn't say this, but whatever. I think they expected like a more traditional science fiction film. And I said, no, I'm actually like, and again, kind of like Nolan, like I'm actually interested in the science as in addition to the human stories or whatever. But I see all these things as so interlinked, and it is a very I don't know, pre-19th century way of viewing the world where like you were a physician and you were a physicist and you were, all and you were human. And I think it did allow for a certain kind of just really, what's that called when everything is one? But not synchronicity, but anyway, there's like a scientific term for it. But it allowed for imagination that was so encompassing and large and freeing.
Mhm.
in a weird way. And so I think in that sort of very old-fashioned way of having the arts link up to, the humanities and the sciences and everything as sort of one study or one way of investigating what are we doing here on Earth.
Yeah.
I have a little bit of that in me, so I am very fascinated by
Yeah,
all these
listen, it fascinates me with my experiences
right.
with the universe and with things that are so beyond. And I try to understand it, but it's not for us to understand. It's for us to unwind an antenna. As I've learned these last 15 years, you unwind an antenna and you become receptive to the universe. And so the more you unwind and the more receptive you are, the more you get.
Yeah.
The more you're able to get. And when I do my spiritual incantations, and again, I'm so joyfully spiritual in the practical modern way, but I'm always and it's semi cute. I'm sharing this with you. I never shared this with anybody. But when I do my, I'm meditating. Not the heavy duty meditation, but I have all my relatives and spiritually they look at me, and some of them actually once. One of them came out of the type something on my phone. Honest to God, long story. But when I do all that, I say, listen, I'm so grateful that you're with me and I'm with you, and it's been a wonderful, joyous thing, and I love it. But do me a favor, and right out of Ghostbusters, I said, do me a favor. I don't want any kind of a vaporous apparition looking at me, so don't materialize. That's what I say. Just keep it like it is. Just these energies, but I don't want to see you. I don't know how I'm going to react to that. And so they're really good about it. They haven't materialized, but my mother actually came out of that picture. And long story, if you want to hear it someday, I'll tell you. But she typed "mom" on my phone.
Wow.
Yeah, I wrote about that in my novel because that is uh, and I've been healed. I was walking with a cane 16 years ago. Anyway, that's not let's um what do you we talked about filmmakers you admire. I always love to ask that. Do you have any favorite movies?
Uh, just generally.
Yeah, sure. Just generally, just favorite movies. Like me, I watch Casablanca 200 times.
Oh, wow.
Oh
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
Yeah,
Well, this
I
is
have.
kind of this, yeah. Uh, I don't know whether this is I don't know whether this is the right answer or not again. I mean, I do. So just going back to tone for a moment, which like puzzles everyone who works with me. We actually had a conversation with at Garden State with about with my composer. I was like, I don't know how you compose music when my tone's all over the place. But she does nail it, and we decided that part of it was my editor had really gotten it. But yeah, like tone. What's interesting is that even though like in many ways, like sci-fi and grounded sci-fi is where I love to live. Tonally, my sympathies and where I kind of came up through is more, I guess I would call it, dramedy or dark comedy. And so I watch the Coen brothers over and over. I love the Coen brothers. And if we're going way back, like one of my very, very early influences, because our parents were not really big on letting us watch TV or whatever, and then you would sort of sneak things in, watch old black and white movies on the TV, which is Billy Wilder. I love The Apartment. And yeah, I
Miss
just think
Kubitschek,
that
is that her name? Miss Kubitschek?
yeah, exactly. And the way he just nailed through this incredibly affecting story of these people who, work for this corporation, feel so anonymous and lost, and that that whole sense of who we are in corporate America. Like to me, like there's a direct line between Billy Wilder and like let's say Severance. The sci-fi show right now on TV right now about, people who are totally separate at work than once they leave work and how those identities cannot match at all. So anyway, I love the fact that he took such a dark subject. Probably, one of the first movies that did deal with such dark subject, but dealt with it so comedically that we could laugh and have some relief about it. And I think, going back to Take Good Care, that's kind of what I was trying to do too, which is like aging, caretaking. Like I said, these can all be very difficult, hard topics. It can be a very difficult role to play, but you gotta like laugh at yourself sometimes too. And so yeah, that's kind of like a coping mechanism for me, I guess, is to always go back to
Okay.
the comedic.
Hey, he did Some Like It Hot, correct?
Yeah,
Maybe one of the great movies of all time. Uh, and that ending still resonates with me. Um,
yeah,
Nobody's perfect, Nobody's so yeah, he's right up there, truly. And The Apartment, you're right. It was on a couple months ago, and I caught little pieces. I'm a big TCM fan, and I watch TCM between CNN and TCM. That's all I really do. It's fine with me. And anyway, last segment here for us, off topic, but I'm actually dying to ask you this. Because you alluded to some of this earlier. So last week I watched the Academy Awards, and now I'm an indie. Author. There's no Simon and Schuster in my life. So I'm an indie author, and which means I love you guys as indie filmmakers. So anything indie, I'm there. But anyway, I watched the Academy Awards, and Honora basically wins everything. Best director, best film, best actress, and it's an indie film, and the budget and the scheme of things for any kind of a film at 6 million at that level is really nothing. So you as an indie filmmaker, are you innervated and energized by what I perceive as a brave new world coming upon the world of indie?
yeah,
What's your take on that?
100%. I mean, I feel like, yeah, I mean, I was talking about it with my friends. The Brutalist was under 10 million. Honora was under 10 million. I mean, these are, to be fair to Sean, he looks very young, but he's not that young. And he has been working for decades to polish his craft. And that's inspiring in and of itself, like kind of like Timothy Chalamet was saying, like, I want to be the best and I'm really to put the work in. And I do think it, it does take the 10,000 hours, to get there. So I want to credit these filmmakers with like their absolute perseverance and their doggedness in the face of incredible financial struggle, which again, I think we all really, really appreciate Sean and Brady to a certain extent making these topics of conversation that because you want to pay your crew, you want to make sure things are fair. I think the people who did oh my goodness, Sing Sing, Greg Quaidar and Clint Bentley. I met them, or I met Greg at least, and they've come up with a very equitable model for indie filmmakers of paying crew similar amounts up front and then trying to compensate from the back end. So yeah, but it's also just like it's so energizing and so inspirational because you've got the models for how you might approach all this, and B, you do see, the critics and even to a certain extent the audiences responding. You see that, Greta Gerwig gets to Barbie because she makes, fantastic, very, very low budget indie movies. Coda I mean, I think Coda was really the one that was starting all this when it won the Academy Award during the pandemic. Like, or I don't know if it started it. I'm not. I'm not. I don't feel like as grounded in like decades of film Oscar history as other people. But anyway, like that was another fairly low budget film that won big. So yeah, it's. I mean, it's like I said, it's incredible. I feel that the creator economy is not only like here, it's here to stay. And that is both terrifying, like I said, because there's a lot of like hard financial realities about that, but also, super inspiring because you can do so much with so little. And we've gotten huge compliments on our production values, and we didn't spend hardly any money. So it is. I mean, we were talking about this before we came on air, but it's this is like I said, a sort of later in life thing for me, but in a weird way, and that's intimidating at times. But it's also so joyous and so inspiring because there are capabilities that exist now for actually making something you are deeply proud of that just didn't exist before.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's all super inspiring to me.
A brave new world for all of us,
Yeah,
us indies. Um,
yeah,
it's
yeah,
great.
yeah. And it's
So,
funny because with publishing too, I remember when self-publishing started, and I remember feeling like, oh gosh, why would you want to do that? Don't you want the big machine behind you? As I'm sure you know with your sales background, like that big machine is important. It does a lot of cool stuff. And in fact, Honora was only made for 6 million, but there was a substantial marketing campaign behind that. Neon did an incredible job. So, and they put a lot of money in there. But so these machines do make a difference. On the other hand, were people able to break through that never would have gotten a shot in regular publishing? Absolutely. We see it all the time. In fact, to the point where now big publishing picks up the indie authors and has people devoted to scouting
yeah,
that. So yeah, I mean, we live in a time where, like I said, I think it's both there's terrifying economic realities, but also on the converse side, the idea that you, as like, some nobody who grew up in nobody, New Jersey, could do something, it just feels more feasible than it ever has. Not you, me.
I understand. I understand. Hey, it's just a brave new world. It's a wonderful world, exciting. And in New Jersey, in a couple of years, Netflix is putting a $900 million studio right
Do
near
you think
Asbury
that will
Park.
come? Do you think it will definitely pass and come?
Oh yeah. Well, New Jersey's very pro creativity and film. And I mean, Spielberg is shooting here next week.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, he's shooting here next week, and Netflix is, they're getting all kinds of tax incentives, and they're going to put it up there, and we're in some strange way, we're becoming a little bit of a Hollywood East, and I hear rumors that somebody big is going to put a, an 800-900 million dollar studio in South Jersey, really South Jersey. So there's all good things coming, and distribution and viewing and streaming, and it's an exciting time, especially for you creative and independent and stuff. So I'm I'm upbeat about all this stuff. So we've come to the this was great. Uh,
Yeah, it's so great.
Truly.
And I'm so delighted that I feel like I had this image of, certain people that I wanted to share, take good care with, and who embody a lot of the spirit of the film. So it's so exciting to meet you because you're the person I'm talking about who
Well, thank
look
you.
at all you're doing.
Thank you. And yeah,
Post
I I
65.
don't, I didn't want to be departed at 65.
No, you don't.
And it's interesting that you picked that number because at 65, my whole life changed. come
Yeah.
to think of it. I went from selling eyeglasses, all of a sudden I'm an author and broadcaster and everything else at 65. Interesting. So, thank you, Dee Dee, so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for sharing that film with me, and thank you for your time with me. I'm officially welcoming you to come back in any shape, way, form. I'm here, sit in this chair 12 hours a day. I actually wore out the arms. Yeah, so please do come back, and I only wish you good things at GSFF.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you. I'm going to stop recording. Don't leave.